Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Facing the Pain. Tonight we review UFC 209, which I already forgot about, and preview UFC Fight Night, Belfort, and the Gas, Kevin Gastelum. With me, as always, my broadcast partner, Sam Arcady.
I'm in a rush.
Gotta dumb her up.
There's a game in 8 minutes.
So we're going to do this podcast in 8 minutes.
That's right. A preview of the NBA Finals. San Antonio's
How can it be a preview of the Finals?
OKC will get the 7th seed. They'll beat the Golden State Warriors. Then they'll play... who will they play in the next round?
They would play the Spurs.
Oh, preview of the Western Conference semifinals.
How could it have been a preview of the finals in the first place?
It's the real finals.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he gets traded to the East?
Nope. No. Oh, yeah. That doesn't make sense at all. How could it have been the finals if they're both in the same conference?
That was what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't get that. Yeah, never mind. Well, you know, the divisional divide is dumb as it is, so yeah,
that is kind of
maybe. True. Yeah, so that's what I was getting at. I was making a greater point that you failed to grasp.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I want to see the two best players in the league, Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, take on. It's a battle of MVP candidates, except
Greg Popovich and Kawhi Leonard.
Somehow one of them, who was the leading candidate for most of the season, fell off, and the other guy is probably ahead of him now, and as far as the favorites go. So yeah, James Harden's going to win it, so it doesn't matter now. But anyway, so I am actually in a rush. So the previewing thing I'm going to half-ass, but you know what I'm not going to half-ass? The analysis for Tyron, Woodley, and Stephen Thompson. You know what happened? They both were made to look silly.
What a fight this was. Nothing happened for 24 minutes. Tyron Woodley landed a takedown in the third round, I think it was. And yeah, that was about it. And then in the final minute of the fight, Woodley dropped Thompson. It was definitely a flash knockout, but the referee let it continue. And he beat the hell out of him in the final minutes, and Woodley finished the fight strong. And he won the decision, majority decision, 48-47, 47-47, 48-47. The judges gave Woodley the third round where he landed the takedown, the fifth round, and then the second round. And one judge the judge that scored a draw gave Thompson the second round, but scored the fifth round a 10-8. So that's how you came up with the score is there, and it
would have been hilarious if he scored the fifth round 10-9, and it would have been a draw. The fight would have been a draw, so they would have had to fight a third time, because I think we deserve a trilogy.
That wouldn't have happened, though. One judge would have had to give in Thompson the fight. If the judge that gave
there's no judge that actually gave it a draw, so other than this one. Okay, so never mind. So it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate because
I was rooting for a draw because after this fight, I just wanted to see a third fight, just for the hilarity of it, not because it would have been any good. But
I think George St. Pierre got back to the wrong division, not decision. Well, he made the wrong decision by coming back, period. But I think, does George St. Pierre not stand a chance against Tyron Woodley?
Tyron Woodley still isn't very good. He just backs up against the cage. He's literally the what Mike Goldberg thinks of Tito, is he has
Tito,
the one...
that was my joke, dude. I was keeping that joke till we get to the 5th round. You just ruined it by being serious about it. The one time you're fucking serious.
I'm sorry. That's really what it was, though. He has one shot in him, and it's just, when is he going to use it?
You kept talking every time you brought up Tyron Woodley. You were like, oh, we know he's good in the first minute. It's the rest of the fight. Now he proved you wrong. He was good in the last minute.
Well, if you score the fight in reverse.
In reverse? Oh, dude. Tyron Woodley is he's a proof of all of our theories, I think. He's a fan of this podcast. I'm a fan of you, Tyron. What a champion. Is this top to bottom, the worst list of champions the UFC has? It has to be. In years. I
was kind of happy he won just because the dude fought for literally 2.5 minutes of a 25-minute fight and ended up winning.
That's efficiency, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. You have to be doing something right to do that. No, the champions list isn't terrible. I mean, Jose Aldo,
Michael Bisping, and
Conor
Tyron
McGregor.
Woodley.
Well, yeah, Bisping and Woodley are not good.
Once you get over lightweight, it is bad. Stipe Miocic. Look, Daniel Cormier is not a bad champion, except he's not the champion.
And he's not the big guy on the poster.
Oh, dude, what a bitch. Why was he upset that isn't Anthony Johnson bigger than him anyway?
They've done that poster so many times. They did it for Diaz in St. Pierre. And it was the same thing. It was just the point of it is the challenger looms large in the background. And it's whatever. It just shows a lack of creativity on their graphics department to just keep rehashing this poster. They really only have 2 poster ideas, it seems like, is this challenger looming large and just 2 guys looking at each other in the face.
They should have had you know what would be creative? If even further in the distance there's a silhouette of John Jones, or John Jones' face speaking, and there's a very small blurb saying, "Hey pussy, you still there?" Imagine how upset Daniel... I should get hired. Imagine how upset Daniel Cormier would have been then.
What a stupid thing to get upset about. The poster.
Dude. So think about it. When the light heavyweight champion we all know is sort of... look, John Jones fucked up. That's not the point. But, come on. He's the champion of that. He's the best guy of that division, and he didn't lose. And he holds a win over the current champion. So you have a semi-fraudulent champion in Daniel Cormier, who's actually a really good fighter. You've got Stipe Miocic, who, we'll get to that in a moment because that's the fight I want to talk about the most. I don't know how Alistair Overeem went to bed there. Probably because he's Alistair Overeem. And you've got Tyron Woodley, who's a modern-day Tito, apparently. And you've got
Michael Bisping,
the most fraudulent champion in UFC history. Also the smartest, but easily the most fraudulent champion in UFC history. Not because of how he won or anything. The way he won the title was actually, that's the knockout. It's fine. I don't have any problem with that. It's the way he and the UFC are engineering his title reign. It's absolutely hilarious.
And just getting the title shots after the decision victory.
That's what I mean. Like, his only legit moment was the title win itself. Because I guess you can point out the guys who won the title in, like, gift decisions, although I can't think of somebody off the top of my head, to be honest, and go like, oh, well, he's a fraud. Has there been somebody that won a UFC title, like, at least in the modern day era, on a totally bullshit decision?
I was trying to think of that when you pulled it up. The first thing that came to my mind was Lawler and Hendricks 2. That was a really close fight. I wouldn't say it was a bullshit decision. No, it wasn't. Like, it was just a close fight, and it could have gone either way.
I'm trying to think. Like, there are flukes, like Vitor and Randy Couture. Vitor beating Randy with that's a fluke. But I'm thinking of, like, just a completely undeserved. It feels like when these things happen, it's more like it goes the champion's way. Yeah. Like, I don't know, like Machida and Shogun or something like that. But Frankie Edgar, BJ Penn one was an absolutely bullshit decision. Except, of course, Edgar, you can't call him a fraudulent champion because he went on and had a good title reign and completely confirmed that he did beat up BJ in the rematch. So, that takes the sting out of that one. But as an isolated decision, that was brutal. And I really think it's the most underratedly bad decision in MMA history, just because I still don't feel, even at the time and now, people don't quite grasp how terrible it was. But I don't think it's grasped.
I don't think it's grasped now for the reasons you mentioned, is because
he went on to beat him.
Yeah, he beat him in the rematch, like, decisively, even though that cocksucker had nothing for him. And then, the Maynard fights. Ben Henderson beating Frankie Edgar. That first fight was close. That second fight was...
The second fight was an even worse decision than the first. The first was close. The second, Frankie absolutely won. How did Ben Henderson's title reign go after that? He beat Gilbert Melendez?
He beat Melendez. He beat Nate Diaz.
So it was pretty legit. You can't call him a fraudulent champ.
No. And then he lost to Anthony Pettis.
Yeah. Okay, so Frankie Edgar, you're a fraud. Nah, Frankie Edgar is... the good fight was announced. He's fighting Yoel Romero. Not real. Oh, no, that would have been pretty brutal. Yeah, that would have been a massacre. Imagine.
I like Frankie's chin. I don't like his chin that well.
That's a fight. I was thinking of your Rodriguez.
Yeah, that's a good fight. We'll see if Yair Rodriguez is actually any good, because decimating...
I think Frankie will beat him.
I think Frankie beats him too. Yeah, decimating 50-year-old BJ Penn doesn't prove too much.
But he beat BJ easier than Frankie beat BJ, which means he's better.
All right, sure. He didn't beat him easier than Frankie beat him in that third fight. Frankie destroyed him in the third fight.
Oh, I forgot about that fight. Okay, so I take that back. So he stands no chance. Better make Frankie fight Yoel Romero. Especially since that guy should be fighting anyway soon. So let's make that fight. Imagine if Dana was a troll and when GSP came back, he's like, yeah, good to have you back, George. You're fighting Yoel Romero.
I don't think George would have come back if that was the case.
He'd be like, no, I didn't put the muscle on properly. I need to fight a welterweight.
Tyron Woodley
this
won.
main event, dude.
Dana White scored it for Stephen Thompson.
Of course, because Dana White is now not at all biased against Tyron Woodley. I read that there was somebody in the Athletic Commission that claimed the judge's 10-8 scorecard is unacceptable.
So in Nevada, we talked about it a few weeks ago. They did the different scoring where judges were allowed to kind of give that 10-8 a little bit more.
Right.
And UFC 208 had a bunch of 10-8 rounds, but in Nevada they haven't adopted that, so it's still.
How stupid is that, though? Shouldn't you go for something like, shouldn't you encourage uniform rules?
Yeah, I agree.
You don't want to create that inconsistency, especially in Nevada, which is sort of
where you're going to have the most fights.
The most lucrative fights, the highest stakes fights. It makes no sense that judges have to apply different criteria depending on the state. Like that's just absolutely ridiculous. And on top of that, the thing is, though, the Athletic Commission personnel is always so reluctant. And when I say reluctant, I mean, like, I've never seen it, to just outright criticize scorecards. So for that to be the scorecard that drew their ire is, for me, pretty curious. Like, seriously, of all the terrible decisions we've seen across the years and all the absolutely inexcusable scorecards we've seen, this is the one you're taking issue with, that round being scored 10-8. Like, nothing happened in a round and then he beat him up. Like, I'm not saying it's a clear 10-8, but I honestly don't think it's that outrageous.
I think anytime you hit a guy with a flash KO, it can be a 10-8 round. Especially literally nothing happened prior.
There's nothing else to assess, you know what I mean? It's not like Stephen Thompson he was jabbing, and there was nothing happening, but the one thing that happened was the guy pretty much getting knocked out. I'm not saying this is boxing where a knockdown should automatically result in a 10-8 round. This couldn't apply to MMA. But in this case, it wasn't just a knockdown. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand how...
Right. If the referee stepped in and stopped that fight, I don't think anybody would have been complaining.
Yeah. So imagine, like, seriously, think about it that way. That's actually a really good point. Think about it that way. It was a situation that probably would have warranted a stoppage. Yet what it ended up prompting was a 10-8 round. And you would have been okay with the stoppage, but you find a 10-8 round ludicrous. How does that make sense? It's like, oh, you stopped the whole fight because of that. That's fine. But 10-8, no, dude, like, enough is enough. Don't get overboard. Like, that really makes no sense, because one action is clearly more drastic than the other, which is stopping the fight. I understand both actions are not carried out by the same individual. You know, one is the ref and the other is the judge. But the consequences of what happened is that a guy almost got knocked out / got knocked out. Enough to where some people would argue should have prompted a stoppage. I mean, he did end up continuing, so, you know, but for his safety's sake, and that's what referees are in there for, ostensibly, you probably might have wanted to stop that fight. But a 10-8 round is just completely... I don't understand that. I don't follow the logic at all. Like, why we... And it's not just that, but it's like you're setting a bad precedent because you're telling other judges not to be liberal with 10-8s. And when I say liberal, that might be interpreted badly, as if you should just give them out like candy. But what's always been an issue with the 10-point must system in MMA, what everybody's ever been talking about, is like, oh, it's a boxing system. It doesn't take into account the intricacies of MMA. 10-10 rounds are rarely scored. 10-8 rounds are rarely scored. And if they were scored more, they would reflect whatever unfolded in the fight more properly, more accurately. So, you know, they should be scored a bit more. And then one judge does it in a high profile, I wouldn't say high profile, but a title fight in a UFC event, and you're scapegoating him.
Who'd you have winning this fight?
I mean, considering I only paid attention to the fifth round since I didn't watch it live, I think I had it a draw, honestly.
Yeah, I had a draw. I had the same scorecard as the judge who had it a draw. Woodley won the round. He got the takedown, and Woodley got a 10-8 in the final round. The rounds Thompson won. You could have called those 10-10 rounds, and I would have been fine with it.
I think that's how I had it a draw, too. Like, I had a bunch of 10-10s, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't get how you have a guy backed against the cage so often and you just fail to do anything with it. Could you imagine if, and I know Nick Diaz is actually really pushing for this fight, and I think Nate might be too, but if Tyron Woodley fought one of them and he just decided to back against the cage the entire time?
Oh, he'd get massacred. He'd get clobbered because that's what those guys do. I doubt he would be that stupid.
This is how he fights every single fight, though. Like, this is literally how Tyron Woodley fights.
I'm with you. But it has to be a whole new level of incompetent game planning and just outright terrible decision making on a fighter's behalf if that's the approach he takes to fighting them. Like this is exactly what they want to do, and you'd be inviting it. However, I'm with you in the sense that when we've seen this so many times, when a fighter fights a certain way for so long, these habits become really hard to shake off.
I think that's the fight that might happen next, honestly. Nick Diaz doesn't... I mean, title shots aren't earned now anyway. He hasn't earned a title shot, but... As far as Damian Maia deserves this title shot. Give that guy a title shot.
Dude, of course. Look, Damian Maia deserves it the same way Jacare would have deserved a middleweight title fight, or even Yoel Romero. The same way Khabib deserves a lightweight title shot without having to go through Tony Ferguson, or Tony Ferguson deserves a title shot without having to go through Khabib, which apparently is, they won't have to. The same way you could make that claim about so many title fights that have happened recently, but that is the current landscape, the current matchmaking landscape.
Yeah, and I'm with you.
I've just made my peace with it, so I'm fine with Nick Diaz getting that fight. It's a fight I would watch. It's a fight I would want to watch.
Yeah, I'm fine with it if that's going to happen, which I feel like it's going to happen.
It's pretty consistent with the recent string of matchmaking when it comes to title fights, especially because the UFC now. Well, first of all, Dana White now has a thing against Tyron Woodley, and he knows none of these fights are going to draw at all. So they would need any cachet name to produce any extra buy rate that they could get their hands on. So yeah, I'm buying that theory, and I'm honestly at this point I'm fine with it. I'm done being outraged about. Unwarranted title shots. I don't think Nick Diaz deserves a title shot against George St. Pierre in 2013, for example.
In the co-main event, the Hospital defeated Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Nurmagomedov, okay.
Whatever. Your Mom's Cooking defeated him. You promised me everything was fine, and you lied to me.
Clearly, Khabib's tolerance for Lebanese food might have diminished. I think that's the only explanation. I don't know what happened to his immunity system, but I was very disappointed. I even texted my mom and gave her quite a scolding. How upsetting was that, though? Seriously.
It happened when? It happened Friday night is when it was reported that he was going to the hospital. And then Saturday morning he didn't show up for weigh-ins, and so then it was reported that the fight was off. It sucked because that was the fight I think we were both looking forward to the most. That's the fight
everybody was looking forward to.
Yeah, that was the big appeal to this card, and then it's and then you get Woodley and Thompson as well, not the other way around.
Right. It was the real main event, and Woodley and Thompson was seen as a nice accessory almost. It's you get another title fight, so this is a stacked card. It's very unfortunate, honestly. And it does highlight sort of how a lot of people within the MMA world focus on the wrong priorities and narratives. Early weigh-ins, they're so important. Look at what's happening since or USADA or any of the recent changes that have occurred, like more rigorous drug testing and everything, look at what's happening. And I know, just to clear up something about the drug testing thing. First of all, I don't know if I've said this since we started doing this. I don't think performance enhancers should be banned in MMA, but we can discuss that more in sport period, actually, but we can discuss that more thoroughly later. I know people listening to this are going to be outraged, but the problem with USADA, for example, is you look at the Lyoto Machida situation, you look at very similar situations. It's not that fighters are just getting popped for steroids and they're getting punished accordingly. That would be fine, but I mean that's the way it's supposed to be given the current rules. It's about the mistakes, the laughable inconsistencies, the disproportionate punishment to offense ratio. It's really, well, not ratio, but basically punishment being way too overboard compared to the actual offense. And early weigh-ins are a similar thing. You're forcing fighters. Somebody made this point on Twitter, and I agree. It's okay to give the fighters option for an early weigh-in. It's not okay to force them into that. And look at how many weigh-in incidents as a result of weight cuts there have been recently. Way more than ever before.
The early weigh-ins, I wrote about this right after the fight got canceled. Like the early weigh-ins, some fighters were for it because it allowed them more time. Because USADA took over and the IV ban happened.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The IV ban is absolutely dumbfounding.
Yeah, and so that's why they went to the early weigh-ins, so they could give fighters more time to recover. The problem is it gives them that less time to cut the weight, because you go to bed and you may put on a couple of pounds, and instead of having those 8 hours before you step on the scale at 4:00 in the afternoon, you don't have that anymore. You wake up and you have to weigh in, so you really have to cut extra weight that night before, knowing that you might gain pounds while you're sleeping. It happens with stuff like this, for those that think I'm just crazy. I just wish fighters were given an option of, if you want the early weigh-in so you have more time to put the weight back on, go for it. If you want the extra time to cut the weight, you can have that too. Like, why does it have to be an either-or situation?
And if anybody actually tries to justify this by saying it's because of the weigh-in as an event, because the fighters have to show up at the same time, blah, 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 please don't be ridiculous. And on top of that,
I think the weigh-in, the actual event weigh-in, becomes more exciting that way.
It doesn't even matter. If they can cancel the weigh-in altogether, for all I care, as far as it being an event. But
right, but isn't it more exciting if one guy? Let's just say the fight is Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping, and Michael Bisping weighs in early, and everyone knows he's made weight, but then you get to the 4:00 public weigh-in, and then Anderson's coming out. It's like, oh, did Anderson make weight? It's a mystery weight.
Nobody cares, but okay, I see what you mean. And on top of that, you got to keep in mind that these fighters have cut weight a certain way for so many years,
right,
and now you're sort of forcing that upon them, and they have to adjust, and it's not an easy process at all. Like, cutting weight is difficult as it is, period, for anybody. It's not fun. Fighters hate it. That's why fighters are so grumpy on weigh-in day, and a lot of time they tell fans, like, okay, if you want to approach a fighter, don't do it on the day of the weigh-ins, because they're grumpy, they're dehydrated. I mean, of course, it makes sense. So it's the most tedious process in MMA, and you just made it more difficult. Good job.
So the fight got canceled, and then, of course, what happened is Tony Ferguson got buried for not accepting a fight against Michael Johnson. And he didn't accept the fight for good reason. the fight was not going to be a title fight. It wasn't going to be 5 rounds, which, Ferguson had trained for. And he was going to get less than the required, not less than the required, less than he originally signed for. And I wouldn't take that fight either if you're going to pay me less to take this fight just to kind of save your card. And he turned it down, and he still got paid less than he originally signed for.
That was his main reason, by the way. He said the main reason is the fact that...
he was fine. He was fine with taking the fight. Like, I'm sure he was okay with fighting Michael Johnson, who didn't have a training camp when he prepared to go 5 rounds. Like, he's taken fights on short notice before. I don't think that was his issue.
He said as much. According to him, maybe he's lying, but
right,
I doubt
that's
it.
What, maybe
he wanted
he's lying.
That payday.
I don't think he is. But this was going to be the biggest payday of his career, and he was supposed to make $250 to show, and I assume $100 to win. I doubt it was $250 and $250. So he was supposed to get $250 to show, and they probably offered him $100, if that, considering he only got $100.
He said it's less than 40% or something like that.
Yeah, so...
That's the number he gave. So it's less than 40% of what he would have originally made. So think about that for a second.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that fight either. And he still got paid less. So he even said he ended up losing money on this whole thing because it was his most expensive training camp. And, you still have to pay your trainers. It's not like, oh, he didn't fight, he has nothing to pay for. Like, he still has to pay for everything.
Dude, he got all that money for not even a night's work. He didn't even work that night, and he got all that money? Dude, it is... let's talk about the UFC for a second. How stingy and... Actually, you know what? Let's just call... What a terrible organization, honestly.
It's not good.
It really... it is... Has there been... I don't remember, in sport at least, a more hostile management towards their own employees as the UFC. And it's publicly hostile. You know what I mean? Like, its head honchos is burying fighters publicly and throwing them under the bus. And Tony Ferguson, props to him. He not only called out Dana White, but he said that Dana told him he'll be losing money on this event. And Ferguson followed it up by saying, and he's probably now on his boat and then about to throw $250,000 on blackjack. Did you hear that?
No, but good on
That's
Tony
a really
Ferguson.
good quote.
Yeah.
And Dana White,
there's the stories. Like, we've heard the stories of Dana White tipping blackjack dealers more than fighters make.
That's right. And look, his personal life is his personal life. I don't care. That is not the point. But the point is, you come to a fighter, you offer him less money, you scold him for not taking the fight, and then you insist, like, oh, I'm making a loss on this event, as if this fighter should feel for you. There's a point that I always hear whenever these commentators praise this fighter for having another job. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, on top of Mike Goldberg used to do that a lot. It's like, oh, on top of being a badass fighter, Joe, this woman also works, whatever. And that is supposed to be a good endorsement for your company.
I know you don't. I don't think you've played the latest UFC game, which is like 2 years old at this point, or at least a year and a half. So in career mode, did you play the first UFC EA game?
I've never played a UFC EA game. Undisputed. The last Undisputed was my last game.
Okay. I don't remember the Undisputed career mode too much. But anyway, in career mode, like, when you're training for a fight, you get basically 3 training sessions. And sometimes a prompt will come up that says, like, your jiu-jitsu coach got sick. Like, you can't train jiu-jitsu for this fight or something like that. And, just to make it a little bit more challenging or whatever. And a prompt actually came up one time that said, you had to work an extra shift at your other job, and so you missed a training session. And I was just like, even in these video games, you have to work a second job.
I mean, it's really amazing that they bring that up with no self-awareness whatsoever. Like, our fighters have to work another job, and if you're Dana White, like, again, the lack of self-awareness, how are you really trying to make this guy feel bad by telling him you lost money on this event when you're a millionaire and head of a company that was just sold for $4 billion, and that guy has made a loss for his fight, and he's supposed to feel bad for you?
Yeah, he's already made a loss, and I assume he would have made money if he got the Khabib fight. But the fact that he didn't get that fight...
he would have made money. Like, okay. I mean, you'd hope he would, at least.
Yeah. But he didn't get that fight, and so he's going to make a loss by fighting, and he's going to make a loss by not fighting, because you're not paying him either way. Like, the best part was, Dana, after the event, they asked him, Did Tony Ferguson get paid? And he's like, yeah, we took care of Tony Ferguson. And by taking care of him, it was less than half of his show money.
Yeah.
Which is...
That's taking care of him. And that's what I don't understand. Look, I'm not going all condescending here, but the first thing they teach you in management class, and like as a business student, you take an introductory course to management, is how a quote-unquote leader or a manager should strive at least to keep his employees happy and reward them. And if you're the UFC, and there's been so much dissent for the past couple of years from fighters, former fighters, current fighters, everybody, about strictly the issue, not strictly, but almost overwhelmingly the issue of pay. That's what everybody's complaining about. And this is a top fighter, not a top draw, but a top fighter in his division, who's been nothing, by all accounts, but a company man so far. He's been doing his job. He's quiet about it. He hasn't spoken that much. So how do you not assess the potential, like, aftermath?
And this is also an issue of fighters just being dumb. And not
standing up for themselves.
Yeah,
more. That's why I respect what Tony Ferguson's doing, because fighters have been used, because the UFC's trained their fighters to basically
like this. Tony Ferguson's not the first guy that this has happened to. He's not going to be the last. And every single time, fighters have tried to band together. I mean, what happened to Double M, Triple A? Like that, we spent probably an hour on them, and I think we talked about them longer than they actually lasted.
That's right. And only because we had a dumb pro wrestling angle.
Yeah. But like George St. Pierre just came back, everything was fine, and it's like this company is, fighters don't care. Fighters just want to get paid for themselves, and they think they are getting paid for themselves, but really they're not.
And there's a culture of, I don't want to say dictatorship, but it's almost is. That was, and keep in mind, look, here's a very good example. What did Dana White say about Tyron Woodley? I don't know if you read that. He said, there's one guy calling the shots here. The sooner Tyron Woodley learns that, the better. When you say something like that, you know what I mean? Like, that's the culture you're promoting.
Dana White is basically Stephanie McMahon's character on Raw. I know you don't watch Raw. That's basically what she does. Oh,
he is the typical the pro wrestling heel authority figure. He's always been that. They're a caricature of Dana White, even though they precluded him. They existed before he did. Preceded him was the word I'm looking forward to, looking to say. But it's really amazing what a caricature of himself he's become, which is even more more hilarious because Dana White was already a caricature of himself. It's not like he's this one guy that overdid it. He always overdid it, and now he sort of toned it up even more, which makes zero sense, especially, again, in light of all the recent developments, all the recent criticism that have come the UFC's way. You'd think that they would try to at least exercise a measure of damage control. At least in this case, like, cooler heads should have... Logic would have just dictated that, hey, okay, let's avoid another, even if it's a very minor PR setback. I'm not saying this is somehow, gonna blow up and the UFC are in big trouble and negative publicity is gonna be too hot to handle. It's gonna be forgotten in a week. It's probably, if we haven't been talking about it now, it's already a dead issue by now. But unless Tony Ferguson keeps bringing it up, which I think he should, but you'd still think they would have been like, okay, let's just. The situation is unfortunate. He clearly had nothing to do with it whatsoever. So let's just pay him what he wanted, and he would have fought. That's the idea. It's not like let's pay him what he would have earned anyway. It's like, let's pay him what he would have earned, and he'd fight Michael Johnson. And in a way, he would be, I don't want to say saving the card, because that wouldn't have saved the card, but the damage would have been reduced somewhat.
I think we talked about this not on the podcast, but what is the harm in paying Tony Ferguson the money that he was owed if he fought Michael Johnson? You're already saving money because there's no way you're paying Michael Johnson what you were going to pay Khabib.
Right.
Like there's just no way. I'm sure Michael Johnson would have been paid more than he typically would have to step up for this fight, but Khabib was probably going to make $300, maybe $350. And there's no way you're paying Michael Johnson that. So you're already saving money in that regard. So why can't you just pay Tony Ferguson what you originally planned to pay him?
Plus, again, as a company that's just been sold for $4 billion, you shouldn't be thinking about how much you're saving on a fucking fight.
Right.
It's fighter's salary. You know what I mean? Like of all the cost cutting, any organization will typically, an organization that's actually doing well, if you're looking to cut costs, ideally you don't want to take that away from employee salaries. Are not the first thing you should be looking to. And I don't even think the UFC are looking to cut costs. It's just, again, it's the culture they have. It's just terrible management. And it really baffles me. Pettiness, strong arming, it's definitely a tactic thing. And again, it's their way of advertising their dictatorship in a way. It's a way for them to still instill that, I don't want to say fear because that makes it over dramatic, but instill that reluctance in their fighters to ever speak up or just demand what's rightfully theirs. What's the harm that would have been inflicted if UFC just paid Ferguson? He would have fought Michael Johnson and everybody would have went home happy. But Dana White has to strong arm. He has to make his presence felt. It's really, it's the way it is. It is so petty, but that's how it works. They're really a terrible organization, but I think by now we've established that point.
In the co-main event that did take place, David Tamer beat Lando Venata. This was supposed to be a showcase for Venata, and he ended up losing. He looked good in the first round, but then Tamer just kind of used his pressure and took away those kind of diverse strikes that Venata likes to throw. Tamer did rock him in the first round, and that seemed to throw off Venata for the rest of the fight. But Venata just seemed to step slower than Tamer. Tamer's a young guy as well. We'll see if maybe Venata wasn't as good as people thought he was, or if David Tamer is actually a halfway decent fighter.
The Lion. I told you.
Dan Kelly beat Rashad Evans. This was a chore to sit through as well. Rashad should probably give it up if you're losing to a guy older than you, and you're not even looking competitive in this fight. At no point did I think Rashad Evans looked good. A couple people on Twitter just basically said Rashad really got by with kind of those fast twitch muscles and his athleticism. And when you're 37 and you're coming off of injuries and you've been fighting for as long as he has, those disappear. And they've really disappeared. And Rashad is just not the guy he used to be. It really says something that pretty much all of these Ultimate Fighter 1 and 2 guys, is there anyone left out of these guys? I guess Diego Sanchez, but he's...
Joe Stevenson is back, baby.
Sure. I mean, that's true.
It's an old... Dude, that generation was not particularly young even then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not a bunch of 20-year-olds at the time. And 12 years have gone by, almost. So, yeah, it only makes sense. It's not, and I'm not saying you're suggesting it's anything unusual. I wouldn't even say it's that sad. It's just reality.
Yeah, I mean, Forrest retired years ago, smartly.
Right.
I mean,
and it feels like it's been forever since he's retired.
Yeah, and Stephan Bonner has been more or less retired forever. Really, all the Ultimate Fighter 1 guys are gone outside of Diego Sanchez. Like, Kenny Florian's been gone. And even the Ultimate Fighter 2 guys. Who else won that? Was Joe Stevenson the other winner?
Yeah, Joe Stevenson won it.
I mean, he hasn't been relevant in years. I know he's coming back, but he still hasn't been relevant.
Yeah, dude, he hasn't been relevant since BJ Penn killed him.
Yeah. When you've been fighting for that long and, it just takes a toll on you. And then you get old.
Yep.
It happens. So Rashad, probably best to just call it a career, honestly.
It's true. There is nothing else to say. I mean, he just lost to a guy who's older than him.
Yeah. Cynthia Calvillo defeated Amanda Cooper. It was fine. I didn't pay attention to it. Who could
Sexist.
care? I didn't pay attention to the co-main event. Those were two guys.
That's also sexist against men.
All right, sure. And Alistair Overeem beat Mark Hunt in the best fight of the night.
By far the best fight of the night. That was actually a good fight. A good heavyweight fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight. Alistair Overeem, he's so weird, and why I had so much trouble picking him in this fight is because just his chin and his game plan isn't good. But you said it last week. Like, as far as skills and just talent goes, the guy really has everything. It's just his flakiness and his chin really prevent him from being as good as he should be.
I think if Alistair Overeem, in the likely event that he doesn't end up winning the UFC heavyweight title, he should be kicking himself because he really is in a perfect situation where had it been another division and he had the exact same skill set, it would have been like, okay, he's a talented fighter.
I mean, he was at light heavyweight for a while.
And he was losing to most of the elite fighters he was fighting there, though. Like, he was getting beat up. And he wasn't as good as he is now, though, then. So, in fairness. But he was getting crushed by... I remember Shogun killed him twice. I remember Chuck killed him. Who else beat Alistair Overeem? I feel like... Dude, he definitely lost to other elite fighters.
I'm looking it up. Rogerio Nogueira. Did you hear me?
Yeah. I'm just listening for you to. I'm waiting for you to list more.
That's really it, honestly. Oh, Arona.
Okay, so those are pretty much all the Pride top light heavyweight guys, bar Vanderlei Silva, who he never fought. So, you know what I mean? So he lost to all the elite at light heavyweight. And again, he wasn't as good as he is now. So he then put up weight the natural way by eating horse meat. And he did get better. I mean, he did win a K1 Grand Prix. I mean, he was roided out of his mind, but I'm not holding that against him. So was everybody else. What's that?
He caught some breaks in that tournament.
He did. But, I mean, that's still impressive. And he definitely... So, skill set-wise, for the heavyweight division, that is my entire point. He's light years ahead of everybody. In terms of striking, I don't think it's particularly close, honestly. And he actually has a good grappling game, like Alistair Overeem's guillotine, which was his undoing in that choke job against Stipe Miocic. But it's legit. He's not a dumb grappler. He has a good top game. He has immense power. He's technical. I'm not saying he's not flawed, and I'll touch on that when we discuss this fight. But who isn't flawed at heavyweight? Actually, most fighters are flawed in MMA, period. But at heavyweight, you can get away with so much by being good at one thing. Dude, Brock Lesnar is the biggest... I don't want to say indictment at all, because I think he was great for the division. He was definitely great for the UFC, and he did maximize his potential given his whole situation at the time, and especially later on diverticulitis. So it's not criticism per se, but he won the heavyweight title in his third professional fight, and he was a guy who definitely. What's that?
Fourth professional fight.
Fourth. Oh, third UFC fight.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that first fight, yeah, okay, fine. So third UFC fight, by beating a legend and then beating, a guy who's apparently in the conversation for being the greatest heavyweight of all time, even though he's not. But, a really good heavyweight in Frank Mir. And what does Brock really have? Great wrestling. He was a good, I would say, overall grappler in terms of having a top game. Brock Lesnar was not just a completely one-dimensional wrestler, because once he got on top, he knew what he was doing. But he was so limited in pretty much every other facet, yet he won the title. Cain Velasquez, by virtue of being more athletic, a very good wrestler, and having cardio, won the heavyweight title. Junior Dos Santos is perceived to be a great heavyweight striker. If you compare his striking to, real elite strikers in MMA, you wouldn't call him great. And when I say real elite strikers, I'm talking in other divisions. Alistair Overeem has all of that and then some. And he's got the experience. He really has it all. And he messes it up so badly. His chin doesn't help, which, okay, fine, it's not completely his fault. But he crumbles under pressure, he's flaky, he's mentally weak, and his game planning is weird. And one of my biggest issues with Alistair Overeem was that he's just not active enough when he's in the fight itself. He doesn't throw typically with the volume in which he should. It's almost like Brandon Vera, if Brandon Vera were any good, where Brandon Vera just stands there, throws a couple of body kicks around, and you go like, okay, I mean, that looks good. Why doesn't he do more of that? The answer is because Brandon Vera is terrible. But Alistair Overeem isn't necessarily terrible. What I liked about him in this fight, though, is he was more active with his strikes. Remember when a couple of weeks ago, actually, we were talking about body shots. I think actually we were talking about Overeem, maybe. And the idea was that it's hard to really put a body shot-centric game plan together, because 3 rounds typically aren't enough for you to completely just work the body extensively to where you later are able to use that to like meticulously chop a fighter down and then eventually use that to end the fight. That's sort of what Alistair Overeem did in this fight, actually. He was able to do that. A big reason was actually volume, he did throw with a lot of volume, and he was so accurate with his body kicks. That teep he was throwing was fantastic, and his work against the fence was absolutely phenomenal. I can't recall the last time two fighters clinching against the fence was that exciting, because he just kept throwing one body kick after another, knee to the body rather, after another. He was active with those elbows from short range. And that's his main strength. That's his main asset. He can fight at distance when he throws those body kicks. I mean, you remember what he did to Brock Lesnar with one, and they're pretty devastating. And in close quarters, he's absolutely brutal. Where he is at his most vulnerable is in like that boxing range. And that's sort of where Mark Hunt had what little success he had in this fight. And that's where Alistair Overeem typically always suffered. And because that's when he's at risk of just getting clobbered in the face. And it doesn't help that he's actually hittable. Like, you can see that even in this fight. He leaves himself exposed. It's pretty obvious. What he was doing smartly in this fight, and Dominic Cruz, who I thought was phenomenal on commentary for the fights I paid attention to, which was only this fight, pointed that out as well by saying he was doing a really smart job. Every time Mark Hunt got close enough to punch, Alistair Overeem's instinct was immediately to grab a shoulder and just close the distance. And he would then like throw a knee and then push off. The couple of times where he failed to do that, he does have this terrible habit of turning his back and running. It looks bad when he does it. I mean, I still running is better than getting clobbered, especially when a guy has an angle on you. But that is a bad habit that's related to just poor footwork and his mental fragility. Honestly, it is sort of like a panicky thing to do. But other than that, I thought he fought a very smart fight. His work against the fence was absolutely brutal. He would get wrist control on Hunt's right hand, even as Hunt had underhook the other side, and just use that to throw that left knee over and over and over, and eventually it left Mark Hunt open for a knee to the head, and he just finished him with that. It's really the perfect body of work, no pun intended, you want to put together. Actually, the pun was kind of intended. Before finishing a guy off, you chop him to the body gradually, and then you just go to the head. It was like UFC Undisputed.
That knee to the head was brutal.
Picture perfect, too, because of Mark Hunt's reaction to it. Like the way he
just crumpled over.
Yep.
It honestly did look like UFC Undisputed, because that's like how they fall when you knee them in the head. They just like fall to all fours.
Yeah, they just fall face first.
Yeah.
It's true. So true.
It was a great performance by Overeem, and one he clearly needed. We'll see what the drug test comes back to say. He's still, I mean, he for all intents and purposes, he should have defeated Miocic.
Yep, that was a complete bottle job on his part.
Yeah, he completely, I mean, he shit the bed in that fight. He had him finished. He went for a guillotine, and then he screwed it up. He's still in the mix, though. I mean, at heavyweight, everyone's in the mix. But
yeah, he wins another fight, and he probably gets another title shot.
I would assume that, I mean, Dos Santos and Miocic is the title fight coming up.
If Dos Santos wins, you got to just go with Overeem right away.
Yeah,
right?
Overeem's already beat him. So
yeah.
I feel like they might do Overeem and Kane, though.
That's a fight I would want to see if they would actually both show up. But that's a really tough proposition.
Yeah.
But
that's the worry, is that one of them won't show.
But it is a great fight. Like, in terms of talent, they probably are the two most talented fighters in the division. And both are, I think, they have a lot of what-ifs around that. At least Kane won the title twice, no less. But, you know, he's a big what-if. Overeem is another one.
I think we need Overeem and Verdum, the Strikeforce Grand Prix rematch.
Oh, Jesus. That's another fight that sort of highlights Overeem being just baffling with his inactivity.
Both of those guys were baffling in that fight.
No. I agree. But at least you could excuse Verdum, because remember, that was right after Overeem won the K1 Grand Prix. That was when his stock was at its highest, and everybody thought he was going to murder Verdum.
That was after Verdum choked out Fedor, though.
I know, but that's also...
Right, but it was... I'm blaming Verdum because every time Overeem threw a shot, Verdum did the fake getting hurt.
Fake drop to your back thing.
Right.
The Damian Maia against Anderson thing. Actually, Damian Maia didn't do that against Anderson. He did it once after a flying knee. It's the Verdum... the Talis Latis, not the Damian Maia. That's what I was thinking of. Talis Latis was doing that against Anderson.
Yeah, I can't blame Overeem too much for not diving into the man's guard.
That's how he beat. That was literally his strategy against Fedor. He oversold a punch. That is the term. He just oversold it, and Fedor fell for it, and he got choked out.
Right. So I can't blame Overeem for not doing the same thing.
Oh, I agree, but he still looked a bit sloppy and sort of sluggish. And that's what I don't understand with Overeem. He tends to look sluggish a lot of the time. It's for somebody that technical. To me, it's just I don't think there's an excuse for it. Especially, and again, I don't think he looks sluggish at all against Mark Hunt. And Mark Hunt is somebody who's a really dangerous striker. But so I don't understand why it happens to Overeem against fighters where that shouldn't happen against. Regardless,
I think Overeem is best just not fighting in a main event or co-main event.
That's your theory?
Yeah.
Okay, well then he's never winning the title.
What if you put the title match on first?
No, you can't put the title first. It has to be a 3-title fight event, like that Strikeforce event. And the heavyweight title fight has to be the bottom title fight.
Why can't you put the title match on first? They're like Saturday night's main event. You put the biggest match on first.
No, you can't curtain jerk with a title fight.
Sure you can.
Well, Alistair Overeem should lobby for that.
Overeem, I've actually looked at this now, and aside from the Brock Lesnar win, all of his other wins were fights that were not in, at least on pay-per-view, were fights that weren't main event fight or co-main event or main event fights. Every other loss was main event or co-main. But
he did lose a fight, I think, that was not a main event or co-main. I think the Antonio Silva fight was neither.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Rashad and Nogueira was the co-main event. What a fight that was.
Holy shit, dude. Sabonis just dunked on somebody hard. Oh, you saw? Okay, you're watching.
I'm watching.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're both. It's like we're both secretly. It's hilarious because neither one of us wanted to admit it, and not for the sake of this podcast. It's because we're ashamed of this fucking team.
Yeah. What a pass by McDermott.
Dude.
That was one-handed,
too. That was fucking awesome.
That was nice. He cocked it back on him.
Holy shit.
That guy's got to retire from the league now. Whoever just got dunked on, you got to retire, dude.
By Sabonis? Yeah. By a white rookie?
Yeah.
By an unathletic white rookie. Think about that.
That guy's definitely got to retire.
Who's he?
Number 3 on the Spurs. I have no clue.
Yeah, I noticed that. Oh, thanks for the help. What's wrong with Pop's nose?
I don't know. I noticed he's got a Band-Aid on it, and it looks very weird. Maybe he had plastic surgery.
I wish I had the volume on when David Aldridge interviewed him, because I'm pretty sure he asked him about it. I'm sure somebody will have tweeted about it. We'll see.
That was
Dougie
UFC.
McBuckets going ham. Dude, we need to wrap this up. The Thunder are up by 10. We got this. An unstoppable offense.
Oh my god, I hate you so much. I hate you so fucking much. I've never hated anyone more in my life.
Nobody gets why this is funny.
No, no one does.
Including you. You don't seem to see the funny side at all.
Because it's not funny. That's why no one gets why this is funny. Because it's not funny.
All right. Are we done with this card?
Yeah. I didn't watch the prelims. There was apparently some good comebacks in the prelims, and Becky Lynch's boyfriend got beat up. Actually, he just got submitted by a knee bar. He actually was beating the shit out of the guy, but then he got caught in a knee bar.
Did you see Joe Rogan freak out about how they applied Vaseline to Mark Hunt's gash? Because what if they grapple and Overeem goes for a leg lock? Because that's very. I mean, in principle, he's not wrong. Like, okay, but he was like, that might be a huge factor. Yeah, a huge factor when Overeem drops for that trademark knee bar.
That was nasty gash too.
Oh, dude, there was one great visual where Mark Hunt kicks Overeem in the body. Overeem blocks it, and then there's like this pile of red on Overeem's elbow. I don't know if you saw that. It looked like something out of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
it was so fantastic. That's a great fight. I really loved that fight, actually.
It was one of the better heavyweight fights
I've seen in recent
time.
memory, honestly. Or I wouldn't say maybe not in UFC history, but as far as like a random sort of middle card heavyweight fight, yeah, it might have been one of the best I've seen. This side of Hunt and Rothwell, of course.
Which is
Mark
the all-time
involved he's involved in all the great heavyweight fights.
As he should be.
And of course, who could forget the greatest heavyweight main event of all time? Say it with me.
Sylvia Arlovsky 3.
No, I'm talking about Mark Hunt, you moron.
Oh, the Hunt for the Bigfoot.
The Hunt for the Bigfoot. There you go. Way to ruin that.
Let's quickly preview this Fight Night card, which is actually good. I don't hate this card. I might even watch it.
Kyle Korver is now second in the league in 3-point percentage. I'm pretty sure he was shooting in the 30s when he was in Atlanta, and I didn't want to trade him for Anthony Moore. Yeah, just saying.
Yeah, you're dumb. Anthony Moore was balling in Chicago. I don't think he scored a single point.
All right, let's do the rest of this podcast.
Vitor Belfort against the Gas, Kevin Gastelum. I'm going with the Gas.
Vitor, whatever. I'm going with Vitor. I like Vitor. Actually,
I like Vitor
ever since then.
But ever since he licked his wife's feet.
Dude, you're stealing all my fucking jokes. Vitor, my favorite two things about Vitor are him giving his wife, sucking on his wife's toes, basically, on Brazilian television in a hot tub. Or was it a jacuzzi? Something or the other.
I think it was a jacuzzi. Well, I mean, hot tub and jacuzzi are kind of the same thing.
All right. And creating his own atmosphere. That's when Vitor won me over.
I forgot he tweeted at me telling me to create my own atmosphere.
Right. No, you told him that he creates his own atmosphere, and he was like, that's right, I do. We should do that as well. Vitor is saying,
because you reminded me of this, I'm going with Vitor now.
That changes everything. But okay.
Now you're going with the Gas? How can you go against the Gas?
I don't know. He never meant anything to me other than that nickname I made for him. If he gets announced as Kelvin the Gastelum, or just the Gastelum, he could just get announced as Kelvin the Gastelum. I would root for him.
I'm going to tweet him right now.
I like Vitor. This is sort of I talk about this a lot. Him and Anderson Silva might be my favorite lead up to a main event ever. That weigh-in thing, that was my Twitter avatar for years. It's really that fight was something else. I don't know. There was that big fight feel I got for that fight. I would say it's top 5 for me in terms of just anticipation in UFC history. Didn't end well for Vitor, and there's a fantastic Photoshop of him licking his wife's toes and then settling Anderson's front kick, hitting him in the face.
That is good.
I need to look that up though. I swear I'm gonna find that, and I'll tweet it if I do, and we'll bring it up on the next podcast. But yeah, Vitor is a dude. Think about somebody tweeted this when Vitor had his first UFC. Oh shit, that was a foul. That's unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate. I know.
That's very unfortunate, and that didn't look like a foul, honestly. See, that's the key all along. Sabonis should have come off the bench. He's the spark off the bench. Dude, that was fucking clean. Jesus.
That was clean. Kawhi got
That was clean.
MVP call.
What a load of shot. Oh, I'm pissed off. Anyway.
So why is there tape on your nose exactly was Popovich's answer.
What a man. I want Popovich to adopt me. I love my dad, but I want Popovich to adopt me.
Yeah. Popovich wouldn't sit there in the room for an hour and a half with you.
That's a low blow. That is so true. Oh, I can imagine the conversation. Dude, imagine them having a conversation.
It'd be great. He'd sit there, he'd ask two questions, and be like, I guess that's all I get. And he'd give 2-word answers, and he'd be like, all right, bye.
He's like, you've raised a good son, Mr. Popovich. He's like, exactly. Or I know.
Like, what do you see in his future? I don't know.
A lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things.
Fucking Andre Robertson.
God, that was bad. It was such a good steal, and then he just gave it right back to him.
I was saying something. Oh, when Vitor had his first UFC fight, apparently the gas was in kindergarten.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the gas is only 25.
When Vitor licked his first foot, the gas was discovering porn. That should be the random facts given out on the UFC, those little bullet points they give. Or maybe John Anik can relay them.
I'm going with the gas. I'm not going with Vitor. But I do love the create your own atmosphere stuff. That was really good.
There is not much to break down. Honestly, Vitor can end his night at any moment, but if he doesn't early, I feel like it's the typical Vitor fight. Like, gas will gradually wear him down. I wouldn't even be shocked if the gas finished him, honestly. I'm just going for a Vitor early finished, because why not?
Shogun Rua against Gian Villante. Why isn't Shogun fighting Vitor? That's what I want to know.
Because I love Shogun. You can't do that to him. I don't know. Maybe that's a competitive? Nah, I still think Vitor kills him early.
I think Shogun beats Gian Villante. I don't think he's that good.
Of course, I'm not going to pick against Shogun. Obviously, my second favorite fighter of all time, behind Josh Neer. It's injuries. What happened to Shogun with injuries is very, very unfortunate. I really think. No, I was going to say I think he would have went down as the greatest light heavyweight ever, but no. John Jones is John Jones. And I think John Jones destroys any version of Shogun. The one he fought was particularly winded, no knees, and off a long layoff. But I do actually think he has the second best light heavyweight resume in terms of level of competition beaten. He doesn't have the Chuck Liddell, Wanderlei Silva long title reigns. But the competition he's beaten, I don't think anybody at light heavyweight, honestly, comes close. Maybe not comes close, but definitely nobody else has it other than John Jones.
And he got submitted by Chael Sonnen.
Again, that only adds to what a sad story turns out to be after all his injuries. And because they did happen at a young age. Shogun won the Pride Grand Prix. He was 25 or 24. Then when he won I'm pretty sure when he won the light heavyweight title, he was still in his 20s, the UFC light heavyweight title. I'm pretty sure he was still in his 20s. And he got injured immediately after that. And when he got back, he didn't catch a break because he was supposed to fight Rashad, which is a winnable fight. And turns out he's fighting John Jones. And he hasn't been the same since. Of course, there's also wear and tear in the battle. The shoot-up box, those sparring sessions they talk about. And, of course, there's the actual battles like the Hojer and Nogueira. Even later on in his career, Dan Henderson, that fight. Oh, shit, I forgot that fight. Probably the greatest fight in UFC history. Shogun's had a pretty spectacular career, honestly, even though it was often interrupted by injuries. You forget some of them, like the Mark Coleman elbow break. You remember that?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That was bad.
And then the rematch, what a spectacular fight that was.
What a fight that was. And when Dana Dana saw that rematch, he was like, oh shit, a good fight for Chuck to bounce back. I don't know if you remember that, when Dana was doing his video blogs.
I do.
Right after the fight, Shogun was still just desperate for oxygen.
That's the thing I always bring up, because now Dana's like, I never make fights right after events. Because, everyone's asking him, like, oh, what's next for so-and-so? And he's like, I don't like booking fights right after events. And, of course, everyone always brings up you book Shogun and Chuck literally in the locker room.
And you videotaped it. He went at Shogun. He talked to him in English. And he was like, you want to do it? Shogun versus Iceman? I still remember he even called Chuck Iceman. Yeah. And Shogun with his, like, yeah, sure, with his English, he probably didn't even understand. Like, I'm pretty sure Eduardo, I forgot his name, Eduardo Alonso, the greatest interpreter of all time, even better than Ed Suarez, because he actually does interpret as opposed to spin his own narrative. Ed Suarez is great, though.
Ed Suarez is awesome.
Chael Sonnen's quote about Ed Suarez making it into the video game is spectacular. Like, I don't care much for Chael, but that was pretty fantastic. He's like, he's the world's most famous interpreter. He somehow made it to the UFC video game. What a quote. And Shogun probably had no idea what Dana was saying, but he was like, all right, I'll take the fight. But he did look pretty fantastic in that fight. And it somehow got him a title shot. You beat old Chuck Liddell and even older Mark Coleman, and you win a title fight. But it was a good decision, because that was the show. I really think the first Shogun Machida title fight is one of the most underrated fights of all time. In terms of like a strategic chess battle in which like every strike counted, like those shots to the body they were throwing. And even though it wasn't the most active fights, it's a really great like title fight, like close, competitive, almost an upset, should have been an upset, a great underdog story, and led to a pretty fantastic rematch. Bottom line is, I'm just saying this to express how much I love Shogun Rua. And I'm hoping he wins this fight. I'm picking him to win it. He should win it. Come on.
He should win, but I mean, it's 2017. Nothing good happens this year.
Unlike 2016, where everything good happened, of course.
Edson Barboza against Beneil Dariush. I guess Barboza. I've heard of this other guy. I can't say I remember a single fight of his.
Kenny Florian is rooting for Edson Barboza.
Is he?
You don't remember when he completely... what was the fight? Barboza against who? He was overselling everything Barboza was doing. And then Barboza actually ended up losing. And Kenny Florian sounded like Frank Mir does when Miguel Torres lost.
Yeah.
I don't want to remember.
Was it the Michael Johnson fight?
No, not Michael Johnson.
So Barboza's losses are Tony Ferguson, Michael Johnson, Donald Cerrone, Jamie Varner.
Can you name me his wins? Maybe it was a fight he won, but...
I'm trying to think when, like, Florian retired.
Look, it's definitely after the spinning kick KO. Definitely after that spin.
All right, so his losses are Lucas Martins, or his wins, I'm sorry. Lucas Martins, that only lasted a minute, or 2 minutes. Rafael Oliveira, that was a 2-round fight. Danny Castillo, that was a majority decision. Evan Dunham, that was a 3-minute fight. Bobby Green, Paul Felder.
I don't know. Forget about it. I don't remember. But I remember, like, Kenny
Great
Florian. Great reference. Kenny Florian once was biased during an Edson Barboza fight. We don't know the fight. We don't know when, how, what year. And we spent 2 minutes trying to figure it out because it's very important. That's what we do. Random trivia.
Ross Pearson against Edson Barboza.
I think that was a fight, actually. I really think that was the fight.
Yeah, I just Googled it, and that's what came up.
Did you just see Andre Robertson's Corner 3?
I was looking down and doing research for this podcast. You know what's funny is you said it was after the spinning wheel kick KO, and it was the fight before the spinning wheel kick KO.
Oh, then never mind. Then never mind.
So yeah, the Ross Pearson fight. I feel like if I had actually looked at the Ross Pearson fight, we would have determined that's what it was, but whatever. We'll go with Barboza. Jussier de Silva against Ray Cyborg.
I'll go with Jussier de Silva because I've heard of him.
Betch Correia, remember her?
Yeah, of course. She gave Ronda Rousey the fight of her life.
Against Marion Reneu, this 39-year-old girl who's probably going to get murdered.
Poor thing.
I don't even think Betch Correia is that good, but
no, she's not. She's definitely 39. Not good, dude. What do you mean that good? She's a female MMA fighter that got crushed by Ronda Rousey in seconds. How good can she be?
Alex Oliveira against Tim. Why you got to be so mean?
Oh, of course we got to go with Tim.
Oh, they fought each other once, and Means kneed him in the head twice, and it was ruled a no contest. I hope he tries to cheat again. That's the sign of a good man.
That's right.
Josh Berkman is also on this undercard. There's some names on this card.
You know who's honestly more curious than Ed Soares making it into the video game was Josh Berkman making it to the first UFC game. I'll never forget. I was so excited. It was the first ever good MMA game, or serious MMA game. I get it. I'm happy. I'm excited about the roster. Of course, I go to the welterweight division. I pick George St. Pierre. Who do I want to play against? I'm just going through these welterweights. John Fitch, Josh Koscheck, Matt Hughes, all these big name welterweights. It's Josh Berkman. It's wait, what? How did he make it there? And that's who I fought against because I wanted an easy opponent to try to figure out. He was my first. That was my first UFC. He took my UFC undisputed virginity. Josh Berkman versus George St. Pierre.
I like how you sped up your joke when you realized where I was going with it.
Yeah, that's right, because that's what you're doing. So George St. Pierre, Josh Berkman, main event anywhere in the country.
Hani Yahya is also on this card.
Oh, he's still a thing? I hope he's still doing that thing where he's just desperate to pull guard as a throwback. Because
how old is Hani Yahya?
Well, he was a WEC guy. So I'm actually going to think he was young in WEC. And he's now only 32.
You're getting good at this game. I don't like it.
How old is he?
32.
Wow. Okay. Sometimes the way you ask the question makes me leads me a certain way, but that still doesn't justify getting the numbers correctly.
Yeah. This is a good card. I might watch it on Saturday night.
I won't, but I'll watch Shogun if he wins. I'll rewatch that fight, and I'll watch Vitor.
I think you need to watch it.
I'll rewatch the fights we need to talk about for the podcast, of course, but I won't see it live. Is what I'm saying.
All right, fair enough. That's gonna do it, I think, for this episode. I like how I ended it at halftime when now it's we should probably talk some more.
I was actually paying attention to that game. Thunder's playing good defense, shockingly.
I don't think that'll continue.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. They'll lose. But a lot of... Well, actually, we can wrap up the podcast and talk about it. Yeah. Because nobody cares.
We'll be back next week.
We're doing a halftime show, and by the time this podcast will be posted, the game's over. Nobody cares. We're just two Thunder fans, and yeah.
We'll be back next week to review Belfort and Gastelum, and of course, preview a card. Do you want to take a guess at the main event for next week's card?
All right. Does it involve male fighters?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that funny? It's a UFC card, right? Not Bellator.
Right.
Okay.
Although there is a big Bellator card coming up that I feel like we should mention. Let me see when that actually is. But go ahead. Keep trying to guess the
is it...
Light heavyweight is the division. I'll give you that.
You're stepping on my toes. Okay, light heavyweight division. Does it involve top 10 fighters in terms of super legit UFC media rankings?
I don't know. Let me look at the rankings. They're not in my top 10, but they probably are in the top 10.
There's no way I'm guessing this, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's the fun of it. Yes, they are. Actually, one of them is a top 5 fighter.
Holy shit. Glover Teixeira? No, he fought recently.
Yeah. In fairness, Ryan Bader is a top 5 fighter according to this UFC rankings, and he's no longer with the company.
Alexander Gustafsson?
No.
Okay. John Jones is not on the rankings, right?
John Jones is not on the rankings. Can you even name the top 5 rankings?
That's what I'm thinking about. Okay, so Daniel Cormier, they don't rank the champion either, right?
Right, he's just the champion.
That's just dumb, by the way, but whatever. So you have Anthony Johnson.
Yep.
Gustafsson.
Yep.
You just said Ryan Bader. Is Glover in the top 5?
Yep.
Okay, so there's this one guy still missing.
Yeah.
Light heavyweight, Glover. OSP?
No.
Okay.
Remember, he just fought.
It would be ridiculous if he's... Oh, did he? I don't remember.
Remember challenger for the UFC light heavyweight interim title, former challenger.
OSP. Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
that was the joke.
Yeah, I got it.
Actually, his last fight was a victory over OSP.
This guy's last fight was a victory over OSP?
Yes.
Dude, I'm giving up. Ask me to guess their ages. Other than that, who are these guys?
Jimmy Manua against Corey Anderson.
No way I would have guessed. What? And who's the one ranked in the top 5?
Jimmy Manua. He's number 4, actually. And Corey Anderson is number 7. The light heavyweight division, ladies and gentlemen.
The dark horse of the light heavyweight fights this year.
I was about to say that before you asked me this ranking stuff.
Good. I stole a joke for a change.
How old is Jimmy Manua?
I don't know, 31. No, I think he might be in his 20s. I'll just stick with 31 because my instincts have been good so far.
37. He's old.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And I thought he was in his 20s. Jesus.
How old is Corey Anderson?
Corey Anderson is in his 20s. Because everybody called Corey must be young. I'll go 27.
Good call.
Oh, all made up for the previous one.
His nickname is Beastin258.
What? That must have been like his MSN Messenger nickname back in the day or something.
That's his AOL account for his email.
Okay, that's a good nickname.
So we'll preview that event in 5 minutes, and we'll review Belfort and the Gas in 15 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah, okay.
And we'll stretch all that out to an hour-and-a-half podcast.
Yeah, we'll find a topic to talk about that's actually probably related to MMA. And if not, we'll just talk about pro wrestling or
Goldberg is the champion.
Goldberg is the champion. So who was UFC heavyweight champion when Goldberg won his WCW title?
Oh, that's
Hogan?
a good question. Hold on, let me look it up.
1998?
Yeah.
Was there even a UFC heavyweight champion?
It would have been like Dan Severn or something. No, here you go. There was no UFC heavyweight champion.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, all right then. So Goldberg has outlasted UFC champions.
I didn't outlast them. He just...
I don't know. I lost my train of thought and tried to
preceded them,
and failed.
But he's still there. He did outlast the UFC heavyweight champion that unfolded. Like, he's still going strong. Randy Couture isn't.
Yeah.
Dan Severn certainly isn't.
Goldberg is better than... He beat Brock Lesnar. Goldberg is better than every or still there compared to every UFC champion all the way up until 2010 when Kane became the champion. I guess maybe Frank Mir, but I feel like Frank Mir got released actually or decided to retire.
Yeah, you got to count Frank Mir though. Goldberg, dude, think about that. This is Goldberg. Pro wrestling is fantastic. This is the equivalent of like Kevin Randleman. Oh shit, Kevin Randleman's dead, right? Okay, so that's not a good. Rest in peace. Boss Rutten, Dan Severn. Maybe not Dan Severn, but Boss Rutten, Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman is a better example. Winning the heavyweight title now. What Goldberg did was the impossible. And now he's going to fight at WrestleMania another UFC heavyweight champion. So this all ties up together.
Well,
he's fighting Brock, right?
He is fighting Brock. That's your WrestleMania headliner.
How are they going to stretch that match? Since Goldberg has only been winning in 18 seconds.
They didn't stretch it at Survivor Series. I hope they don't stretch it here. I hope the WrestleMania main event
goes seconds.
Yeah. It'd be great compared to last year's main event, which went a half hour and should have only gone seconds.
That is true.
That Roman Reigns Triple H match was brutal.
They should, move per move, redo their first WrestleMania match. Move per move.
Including Austin coming out of the end and just stunning
everything, including everything. The staring, the walking around. What a match that was. That WrestleMania 20 card was something else, honestly. I think it might be the most underrated card of all time.
I don't remember the main event. Triple H and Shawn Michaels for the 1 millionth time.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and then like some inexistent God beating them up.
Shadowy figure making them tap out.
God as a wrestling joke for those who don't get it. When God walked out, and there was a spotlight.
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't think it was on the podcast, but we were like reminiscing. Yeah,
but I remember you were high as fuck late at night.
I actually tweeted that video. I was like, pro wrestling is so fantastic. And I tweeted that video. What a fucking angle that was. Vince McMahon made him dance. He's like, I want to see God get jiggy with it. Pro wrestling is the best.
It's the worst, too.
It's better than MMA.
I think, you know what I want? Remember that forum post you once directed me to that had like, all these like supposedly potentially bullshit pro wrestling rumors? I want something similar for MMA. I want something similar for MMA.
I bet it'd be pretty fantastic.
I mean, one of the rumors was that Steph does Triple H and Austin with a strap on.
Yeah.
Austin was thrown in there somehow. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. Like, okay, wait, why is she doing Austin with a strap on?
I don't know. I believe that one.
I can imagine Steph with her high-pitched voice doing it and going, "Oh, hell yeah!" Well, that's a terrible Steph impression, but you know what I mean.
Let's wrap this up.
This
is
podcast
all
took
still
a
in the podcast.
Oh, shit, yeah. We're talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin being penetrated with a strap-on. That is a legitimate pro wrestling rumor, ladies and gentlemen.
The best sport in the world. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you right back here.
Inside the Octagon.